Hello everybody, my name is Timey Girl, aka Time, aka Baby Girl, and I am here to talk to you today about plot. Just kidding everybody, it's me, obviously. Alright, so, like I said, we're going to talk about plot. Now, what is plot? Plot can be defined as the sequence of events in a story, or in other words, what happens in the story. So we start out with something called background. Background is pretty much everything that's been going on up until the complication occurs. The complication, that's just where things get complicated, where it all kicks off. So we start with background, the state of normal, whatever it might be, positive or negative, it's just continuing on the same level. And the complication makes us jump, makes something change. Things that were normal, things that were stabilized before are now gone, are now unstable. And by the way, guys, this structure I'm talking about, I'm trying to show you visually right now, going from a state of equilibrium to jumping up. This is really well illustrated by the graphic that I've included in the How Do You Read Stories PowerPoint. So this video is actually going to be located right next to that. So if you need to, if you want to, go back and refer to that graphic. So continuing on, we move to the rising action. So like I've already said, we've got equilibrium, the complication, that spark that sets things off, and then the rising action where we gradually increase tension. That tension escalates and escalates and escalates until it can't possibly escalate anymore. That brings us to the point of climax. Again, where something's gotta give. We can't possibly pack any more tension into this story. After the point of climax, after that tension kind of comes to a head, then we have what's called the falling action. And in some stories, we might not actually get much falling action. They might just jump straight to the end, straight to that new equilibrium, that new state of normal called the resolution. We'll talk more about that in a second. But most stories will have some sense of falling action. By that I mean, just like our rising action was an increase in tension, the falling action is a gradual decrease in tension. So it's like we're going up the slope on one side, coming down on the other side, and then taking us to our resolution, our new state of normal. So to clarify again, the falling action is where all of the problems that came up in rising action are resolved. So then our resolution, it could be that things are returning to the way they were before, or there could be something called a reversal. And a reversal, just like an Uno reverse, it's where things are turned on their head. So we might go from a positive to a negative state, or from a negative to a positive state. Whatever that change is, it's a 180. It's a complete opposition of how things were starting out. And it might be that not all characters experience this reversal. It could be just one character or one element within the story. So just to provide a quick example of a reversal, and I've actually included 2 of these in our How Do You Read Stories PowerPoint presentation. So one example would be Iron Man. So you guys might be familiar with Marvel's Iron Man series. He ended up being one of the Avengers. Basically, the story of Iron Man, he's a rich dude named Tony Stark. When things start out, he really doesn't care about how he makes his money. Like, he really doesn't have any moral qualms about selling both to his country's military as well as the enemies of his country. However he can make his millions, that's how he's going to make them, and not feel bad about it. But this changes when he is taken as a prisoner of war and held for a while, basically forced to build a weapon for them, for these bad guys that he was selling to. And while he's imprisoned, he befriends another prisoner. They get really, really tight. And in the process of escaping, this other prisoner is killed. And it turns out that this other prisoner, he never had any intention of surviving. His goal was to make sure that Tony Stark survived, so that Tony Stark could be a better person, could change the world. So this reversal, by the end of this movie, Tony Stark has gone from well, I said millionaire, I think, but he's probably like a multi-billionaire. Goes from super, super rich dude who doesn't have any morals to a guy who, although still rich, now uses his power to try to help the weak. Now uses his money and his technology to try to fight the bad guys instead of supplying them. So, folks, using that example, talking about Tony Stark, when I was talking about or describing how he had like this sudden realization of what I've been doing is wrong, selling to anybody just to make money is wrong. That sudden realization, that sudden understanding of something that was not understood before, that's called an epiphany. That's another one of our literary terms. So an epiphany, it can be experienced by a character in the story, but it also could be experienced by the reader. Again, that sudden moment of realization. Now, folks, one thing that we should be aware of that is really important is that you will not always get these parts of plot in chronological order. Sometimes we'll experience the story out of chronological order, meaning you might come in the middle of the story. You might be dropped in the middle, not knowing what led up to this point. If that were to happen, which it often does, especially we see that a lot in TV and movies and stuff, that's called in medias res or in medias res. I'm not really going to be particular about how you say it, but it's spelled in, medias, like the word media, medias, res, res. It's a super old term, comes from the ancient Greeks, and it means in the middle of things. So this is a term that we are using to refer to when a story drops us in the middle of the plot without yet knowing what came before. So we might not know what's the state of normal that was disrupted, what was the complication that did the disrupting, what has brought us here. We'll get that information most times in the form of flashbacks. You guys all know what a flashback is. This is, again, a really common tool used in visual storytelling. When you have a character go, and the thought cloud pops above their head, and all of a sudden we're transported to get that information from their past experience. Now, this is something to be aware of at all times, but especially with our first reading, with The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. All right, and that is about it for plot for now.